Breaking right now, could there be a historic cleansing of the cover-up regarding the most famous assassinations in American history? It certainly seems that way after Donald Trump signed an executive order to release all of the files in relation to the shootings of JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King Jr. Watch the historic moment where this happened in the Oval Office.
Lastly, sir, we have an executive order ordering the declassification of files relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's a big one, huh? A lot of people are waiting for this for years, for decades. And everything will be revealed. Okay? Give that to RFK Jr.
Yes, sir.
Now, this order requires now the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General, and remember, neither of those positions have actually been confirmed yet, to spend just 15 days coming up with a plan to release the JFK files. They then have 45 days to come up with plans to release all the RFK and MLK files. Of course, for folk like me who struggle to believe the official narrative, certainly when it comes to JFK and the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone shooter and then was completely innocently murdered by Jack Ruby without any involvement from the FBI or CIA, this could be a significant day. William Clouston is the leader of the UK's SDP party. What do you make of it? Is this going to be a historic moment, or was the cover-up put in place so long ago that in fact there might be nothing in these official files to really change that narrative?
I don't know, but we're about to find something out, aren't we? Because extra information is about to be available to historians and so on. I think I can always understand governments putting documents into top secret files and beyond reach for a period of time, particularly because the individuals that presided over are still alive, still around. But that's not true now. Largely, that's not true. So I welcome Trump's initiative in doing this. I think it's welcome. I mean, like everyone else, I've read quite a lot about Kennedy's assassination, that's JFK's in particular. And certainly I would regard JFK as one of my political heroes. If you read Schlesinger's account of his life and his first period in office, it's very moving, actually. And I think he was a very, very thoughtful fellow. I think he started to make some errors already on things like Vietnam and involvement there. But it was a tragic event for the United States. Unfortunately, not an uncommon event. You know, Reagan was shot, Trump was shot. So we'll find out. I don't think it's a bad idea to get the information out. Whether we get anything that's veridical, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, because the thing is, there are 5 million pages in the collection of the National Archives and the Records Administration. Now, in 2022, when Trump ordered the release of as many files as possible, it was said that 97% of them already were public. But that is still a mega treasure trove of files to be released. What's your personal feeling in terms of the assassination? Do you feel that the government narrative does add up and that Lee Harvey Oswald was acting alone and that there was no FBI or CIA involvement in the murder?
I tend to take a very economical view on these things. The thing that's always puzzled me, Dan, is just the footage, actually. Not so much the question of, did Oswald act alone? Very odd that he was shot days later and all of that stuff. And obviously his involvement with the Soviets and his trips to Moscow and everything else. It's not so much that, it's just the footage itself. The shot when Kennedy's head goes back, the position of the car at the time. And those things are the things that a lot of people have spent a lot of time speculating on. And they're probably right to. I think it's quite often the very obvious thing that you've got to look at. But as I say, we'll welcome it. I mean, the one thing for sure, despite the fact that there are millions of documents, there won't be any shortage of people that will go through them if they're available. I can tell you that.
No, indeed, but it is fascinating looking at the contemporaneous evidence in regards to the assassination, because certainly the eyewitnesses from the time immediately after the shooting do not believe that there was a lone shooter, think that it is impossible given where they heard the bullets come from, do believe that there was at least a second shooter on the grassy knoll. Now, the other thing that to me is obviously completely fascinating is the death of Marilyn Monroe as well, which has never added up to me. Absolutely feels like there was FBI and CIA involvement in it. But I guess one of the issues with trying to get to the truth is that all of a sudden you're seeing, I guess, the faith that Americans have in their system really put to the test. Although I wonder if after the past few years, that has already happened when you look at, for example, the COVID debacle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fascinating, by the way, this is the only picture, do you know, this is the only picture of Marilyn Monroe and JFK in the same frame, even though they had that very lengthy affair. Anyway, that's a slight aside, but you understand what I'm saying. Is it dangerous at all for Americans to start to think, whoa, goodness me, maybe the FBI and the CIA aren't actually on our side, which is something that lots of right-wing commentators like Candace Owens have been exploring for some time. But first, the reason you're watching this show is because you know that these days, and we've been discussing it lots at the moment, it's impossible to trust the mainstream media or the so-called fact checkers who claim to patrol social media. And that's for a very good reason, given the Brexit debate, COVID debacle, and demonization of Donald Trump. But I've got the solution for you. Today's sponsor, Ground News, created by a former NASA engineer to provide you with the only safe way to consume the headlines, is going to solve so many of these issues. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out for yourself, by the way. But I want to show you this incredible website and app in action. So let's take the recent story we've discussed at lots of Outspoken of Elon Musk's fallout with Nigel Farage over Tommy Robinson, which the left-wing legacy media tried to whip up to destroy all three men, actually. And by looking at Ground News, you can see very clearly that it's collated the 230 sources on this story in one place. But what Ground News instantly shows is how the story is being covered by the media and broken down by whether those media organizations lean to the left or right, illustrated by its biased distribution service, which features on all stories. Then you can scroll down and actually see every article about the topic broken down by the political position or ownership of the publication. So in this case, it shows quite clearly that Fox News gave a fair analysis compared to Mediaite and The Independent, which did not, lambasting the men as morons with big egos without actually looking into why this split happened and how it can be resolved. What's more, Ground News gets to know you personally, providing you with the news stories you're interested in, while also analysing your own biases and coming up with potential blind spots you might not be hearing about because of your media consumption. And look, I know you love the news, that's why you're watching Outspoken, but you don't trust the legacy media. But what Ground News does is give you the tools to understand the truth about what is going on in the world. It is the only way I read the news now, allowing you to see through media bias and manipulative narratives with no more relying on the MSM to define what's really going on for you. So go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. You can subscribe through my link today for 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use for unlimited access. And I should say, by the way, Ground News is a really great organization. It is subscriber funded, and by supporting my sponsors like Ground News, you also support my work too. And for less than a Netflix subscription, you can get all the world's news in one place and think for yourself. It really has been a game changer for a news junkie like me. So let me just repeat the address. It is linked in the show notes below, or you can click on the QR code if you're watching on screen. But the address, ground.news/outspoken.
Well, in a free society, you've got to be able to ask those questions anyway, I think. And I think people asked them at the time, didn't they? I think the point I made earlier about this being probably a better time to get the full information, or all the information that's there, is that if people are covering up, they probably, who were responsible, if they were responsible, they don't exist now. Largely, they don't exist. And also broadly, we should remember, right, that this new Trump 2.0 administration does include a Kennedy, a very important one. And he, it's interesting if I'm correct in saying that that Bobby Kennedy, Jr. does not accept the official narrative of his father's death, apparently, and certainly there isn't agreement in the family.
No, there isn't. I mean, the Kennedys are at war over this. And of course, they have been war over RFK's alignment with Trump anyway. The great Democratic dynasty turning on their legacy party. I would argue, though, the Trumps are the new Kennedys. They are the ones that have brought that glamour to politics. They are the ones that I think for many decades to come will have a big role in the MAGA movement. I would not be surprised if you saw a Donald Trump Jr. enter the political realm, for example. Lots of people are already predicting that maybe you'll see Barron Trump one day in the White House. But it is fascinating. The Kennedy dynasty have been completely split over this. But certainly I've interviewed RFK Jr. in the past. And no, he does not accept the official narrative of his father's death. There is lots that doesn't add up. And of course, he has even visited the alleged killer in prison. So I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. And in that video that we saw, Trump, of course, said, and I thought this was a really nice touch, and it does show, actually, people don't like to ever talk about Trump's human side, but he knows what this means to RFK Jr. And so after signing the executive order, he had a thought, and he gave the pen in which he signed the order to one of his aides, and he said, give that to Bobby, give that to Bobby. And I thought that was a very nice touch. But look, it's certainly fascinating. I cannot wait for the release of these documents. If you are someone like me that doubts a lot the official narrative, we're going to have a lot to go on. However, I do agree with the folk who say, okay, release the Jeffrey Epstein files next, release those files, because there's a lot more to be seen in terms of more current cases, I guess. Plus, by the way, Trump's assassination, or near assassination, because I'm sorry, I do not believe the official narrative on that one for a single second. But look, William Clouston is going to stay with us. He'll be back in just 1 minute, because I think this one will make you angry. Chris Martin of Coldplay. He's just so embarrassed at the moment, so embarrassed to be white, British, and middle class. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.